Have you ever blamed your morning fatigue on just getting older? Or thought a strange tingle in your fingers was nothing more than poor sleep? You're not alone. But what if I told you that these small signs could be the brain's first whisper of a much bigger problem? Every year in the United States, nearly 800,000 people suffer a stroke. That's one every 40 seconds. And here's the part that's most alarming. 3 out of 4 strokes happen to adults over the age of 65. People just like you, or someone you love. Now, listen closely, because this next fact could change everything. In up to 85% of cases, the body gives off warning signs hours, sometimes even days, before the stroke hits. Not dramatic signs, not a fall or collapse, just small, subtle symptoms that are all too easy to brush off. Let me share a story. Edward, a 71-year-old retired teacher, woke up one morning and noticed his left fingers felt oddly numb. He flexed them, shook them out. Told himself it was probably just poor circulation. Later that day, his speech slurred just slightly when he ordered lunch. He joked it off. "Maybe I need more water," he said. That night, he collapsed in the kitchen. The stroke had been building silently. His body had spoken, twice. But like so many older adults, he didn't know how to listen. That's why this video matters. Because stroke doesn't always arrive like a bolt of lightning. Sometimes, it comes like a whisper. And unless we know what to watch for, that whisper can turn into a roar. One that changes your life forever. And here's the scientific truth. Every minute you wait, nearly 2 million brain cells die. The phrase "time is brain" isn't just a medical slogan. It's real. And it's why acting quickly, not guessing, not waiting, is your best chance to protect your independence, your memory, and your life. So, stay with me, because in the next few minutes, we're going to go through 7 early signs your body might be on the verge of a stroke. What they feel like, why they happen, and what to do the moment they appear. Because after 60, staying strong doesn't just mean eating right and exercising. It means learning to recognize when your body is trying to warn you, quietly, urgently, and possibly for the last time. Stroke doesn't always knock you off your feet. Sometimes it taps you on the shoulder. A hand that tingles for no reason. A word that slips away mid-sentence. A glass that slips from your hand, even though your grip felt just fine a moment before. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And that whisper is easy to miss, especially when we've been told all our lives that growing older just comes with funny little changes. But what if those little changes weren't just aging? What if they were the beginning of something preventable? If only we knew what to listen for. That's what we're doing here. Because when you recognize the whisper early, you get to write a different ending. So what exactly should you be looking for? The truth is, stroke symptoms can show up in ways that don't feel dramatic at all. They may last just a few minutes. They may come and go. They may feel like everyday aging. But they're not. And recognizing them early could mean the difference between walking out of the hospital or never walking again. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through 7 early warning signs of a stroke. Signs that often appear before the real damage begins. Here's what we'll cover. Sudden numbness or weakness on one side of the body. Sudden confusion or trouble. Speaking sudden trouble seeing in one or both eyes. Sudden dizziness or balance problems. A sudden severe headache with no known cause. Sudden trouble understanding or following conversations. Sudden difficulty walking or performing everyday movements. Each one might seem small on its own, but together, They could be your brain's way of saying, "Help me now." Because instead of brushing it off as aging, you can choose to take action. Instead of waiting it out, you can call for help. And instead of facing months or years of recovery, you may be giving yourself the chance for a full return to independence. Let's go through them, one by one. You reach for your morning coffee, and your hand doesn't respond the way it should. Or your leg feels strangely heavy, like it doesn't belong to you anymore. No pain, no injury, just a sudden sense that something isn't quite right. Sound familiar? Most people brush it off. They think, I must have slept on it wrong. Or maybe it's just arthritis acting up today. But this kind of numbness or weakness, especially when it affects only one side of your body, could be the first sign that your brain is in trouble. Here's why. During a stroke, blood flow to part of the brain is suddenly blocked. And because the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, and vice versa, this interruption can cause immediate changes in your strength or coordination on just one side. That's why it's often the left hand that drops the fork, or the right leg that won't hold your weight. The muscles themselves aren't the problem. It's the signal from the brain that's failing to get through. According to the American Stroke Association, more than 70% of stroke patients experience sudden numbness or weakness, most often on one side of the body. A 2019 study in The Lancet Neurology found that people who ignored this symptom were 6 times more likely to suffer a major stroke within 48 hours. 6 times. And here's what makes it dangerous for older adults in particular. It doesn't hurt. No sharp pain, no swelling, nothing that screams emergency. And that's exactly why it gets ignored. Let me tell you about Claire. She's 75, from Ohio. One winter morning, she noticed her left foot felt tingly. Cold, maybe. She didn't think much of it. An hour later, she dropped her spoon at breakfast. Her left hand just gave out. But her husband had recently watched a video. Just like this one, he remembered the warning signs. He called 911 immediately. Claire was treated within 90 minutes of her first symptom. And because they acted fast, she walked out of the hospital with no permanent damage. Now, imagine if they had waited. If they had chalked it up to just another senior moment. The outcome could have been very different. So what should you look for? Be alert if you feel weakness or numbness in your arm, leg, or face, especially on one side. Difficulty lifting both arms evenly. Sudden clumsiness, like dropping things or dragging your foot. And most importantly, don't wait to see if it goes away. Even if it does. Even if you feel better after a few minutes. Because with stroke, time lost is brain lost. And acting fast could mean the difference between walking again or never walking at all. You're in the middle of a conversation and suddenly the words don't come out right. Or maybe someone's talking to you and you hear them clearly, but you can't quite make sense of what they're saying. You want to respond, but your words feel jumbled, slurred, or stuck. This isn't just forgetfulness. And it's not just being tired. It could be a stroke. One of the most common and most frightening early signs of a stroke is sudden trouble speaking or understanding speech, and often it comes without warning. So what's really happening? There are areas in the left side of your brain responsible for forming words, understanding language, and making conversation feel effortless. But during a stroke, when blood flow is disrupted to these areas, the connection breaks down. The brain knows what it wants to say, but the message never makes it to your mouth. It's like dialing a number with no signal. Everything's in place, but nothing's getting through. According to a 2021 study in stroke, the Journal of the American Heart Association, over 30% of stroke patients report sudden speech problems in the first hour. And here's what's even more critical. The faster you act, the better the outcome. Patients who receive medical care within 3 hours of speech-related symptoms are significantly more likely to recover fully. But those who wait, even just a little, risk permanent damage. Let me tell you about Robert. He's 68, a Vietnam veteran from Kansas. He was telling his granddaughter a bedtime story when she noticed something odd. His words started slurring. He laughed it off, said he was probably just tired. But his granddaughter remembered a school presentation about stroke. She asked him to say the sentence again. This time, the words didn't make sense. She didn't hesitate. She called 911. Doctors confirmed Robert was having a mild ischemic stroke. Because she acted fast, he received treatment within the golden window. And today, he's back to reading stories, loud and clear. So what should you watch for? Slurred or garbled speech? Saying the wrong words without realizing it? Trouble understanding simple questions? Speaking slower or faster than normal? Silence, even when trying to talk. If it happens suddenly, and it's not getting better, don't try to walk it off. Don't assume it's just fatigue or low blood sugar, because instead of waiting for clarity, you could be wasting precious minutes. And instead of fumbling through the next sentence, you could be getting life-saving care. Stroke doesn't just steal movement. Sometimes it steals your voice. But if you listen carefully and act quickly, you can take that voice back. 1 minute, you're reading the morning paper. The next, the words start to blur. Or maybe half the screen goes dark while you're watching television. Some people say it feels like a curtain being pulled across their vision. Others describe it as looking through a broken mirror. But here's the catch. It often clears up just as fast as it came. So, it's easy to dismiss. It was just the lighting. I must need new glasses. Maybe I stood up too fast. But sudden vision loss, even if it's temporary, can be an early sign of stroke. And ignoring it could cost you everything. Here's why. The part of your brain that processes vision relies on steady blood flow, especially from arteries at the back of your head. When a stroke interrupts that flow, the brain can no longer make sense of what your eyes are seeing, even if your eyes themselves are perfectly healthy. That's why some people say, "My eye felt fine, but it was like my brain couldn't understand what it saw." The American Academy of Ophthalmology warns that sudden, painless loss of vision in one eye can be a red flag for a retinal artery occlusion, often called a stroke in the eye. The National Eye Institute adds that up to 25% of people who experience this go on to suffer a full stroke within a week. That's a warning you cannot afford to ignore. Let me share a story. Lorraine Jacobs, 79, was baking cookies when her left eye suddenly dimmed. She blinked, rubbed it. A few seconds later, it cleared. She figured maybe she'd just strained her eyes. But the next day, it happened again. Only worse. This time, her daughter insisted they go to the ER. Doctors discovered Lorraine had experienced a mini-stroke in the visual area of her brain. Because they caught it early, she avoided a more serious stroke just days later. So, what should you look out for? Blurred vision that appears suddenly. A dark or gray shadow over one eye. Double vision, tunnel vision. Trouble focusing on text or recognizing faces. And most importantly, don't ignore it just because it goes away. If your vision changes without warning, even for a few minutes, call 911. Because instead of assuming it's your glasses, ask yourself, could this be something bigger? You only get one brain, and your eyes may be the first to tell you when it's in trouble. You stand up from a chair, and the room tilts. You take a few steps and feel like your legs aren't quite under you. Maybe you reach for a glass of water and nearly miss it, or bend down to tie your shoes and feel like you might fall over. Sounds like aging, right? But what if it's not? Sudden dizziness or trouble with balance and coordination is a common early sign of a stroke, especially those that affect the back of the brain. That's because your cerebellum, tucked at the base of your brain, controls balance and coordination, and your brain stem, just below that, controls movement, breathing, and heartbeat. When blood flow to those areas is blocked, your body struggles to do even the most basic things, like walk in a straight line or stand up without swaying. Here's what the science says. A 2022 report from the American Stroke Association found that over 40% of people with strokes in the back of the brain reported dizziness or loss of balance as their first symptom. Even more concerning, a study in the Stroke Journal found that 60% of older adults with cerebellar strokes were misdiagnosed during their first ER visit. They were told it was vertigo, or dehydration, or just a little off today. That delay in care, it doubled their chances of permanent disability. Let me tell you about William Harris, 76. He was gardening one morning, reached down to pull a weed. When he stood up, the world spun. He stumbled, nearly fell. His wife thought maybe he hadn't eaten yet, but 20 minutes later, he couldn't walk in a straight line. He reached for the wall to keep himself steady. She called 911. Scans revealed a cerebellar stroke. Because she didn't wait, William avoided serious brain damage, and 2 months later, he was back in the garden, on steady feet. So what should you watch for? Sudden dizziness or vertigo? Trouble walking or standing up straight? Feeling off balance even when still reaching for things and missing? Falling for no clear reason? Here's the key. If this happens suddenly and you haven't felt it before, it's not just getting older. It might be your brain struggling to stay in control. Instead of brushing it off as fatigue, consider it a red flag. Because in stroke care, a 10-minute delay can change your next 10 years. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, let me pause for just a second and ask, is there someone you care about, someone over 60, who needs to know this? If someone came to mind, pause now and send them this video. Don't wait until it's too late. A quiet warning today could save their independence tomorrow. It strikes out of nowhere. A sharp, pulsing pain, sudden, intense, and unlike any headache you've had before. Some call it a thunderclap. Others say it felt like something exploded inside their head. You might try lying down, taking a pain pill, drinking water. But here's what many people don't realize. A sudden, severe headache with no clear cause can be a warning sign of a hemorrhagic stroke. And unlike most ischemic strokes, which block blood flow, hemorrhagic strokes happen when a blood vessel in the brain bursts. The pressure builds, tissue is damaged, and within minutes, your life can change. The scariest part? For many people, that headache is the only symptom. No weakness, no slurred speech, just pain. Intense, overwhelming pain. The National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke reports that 1 in 10 strokes in older adults is hemorrhagic, and nearly all begin with sudden, severe head pain. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that over 70% of seniors who had a hemorrhagic stroke described the pain as the worst headache of their lives. And here's the dangerous trap. Because it feels like a migraine or a tension headache, many people try to sleep it off. But waiting even 30 minutes can increase the risk of death by over 50%. Let me tell you about Angela Ruiz, 73. She had just finished her crossword puzzle when she felt a sharp, crushing pain at the back of her head. She thought, maybe I need coffee. But as she stood up, her vision blurred. Her words slurred. Her daughter didn't hesitate. She called 911. Doctors found a small brain bleed, something that could have grown fatal if they had waited. Angela avoided surgery, and within days she was back home, holding her grandbaby. So what should you watch for? A headache that hits suddenly and feels explosive. Pain that's sharp, deep, or unusual for you. A feeling of intense pressure inside the skull. Headache accompanied by nausea, confusion, or vision changes. No fever, no sinus symptoms, just pain. Out of the blue. If you've had headaches before, you know your body. This will feel different. And if it does, don't lie down and hope it passes. Don't wait to see if it gets better in the morning, because instead of recovery, waiting could mean surgery. Or worse, acting fast can mean survival. You're standing in the kitchen, holding your car keys, but you can't remember why. Or someone asks you a simple question, and for a moment, you don't understand what they're saying. You feel foggy, like the world is a step ahead of you. We all have forgetful moments, losing track of a thought, misplacing your glasses. But this isn't ordinary forgetfulness. This is confusion that comes out of nowhere. And it could be your brain signaling a stroke. Here's what's happening inside. When a stroke affects the frontal or parietal lobes, the areas responsible for thinking, decision-making, and understanding, it can interrupt your ability to process even the simplest tasks. You might feel off without knowing why, or say things that don't quite make sense, even to yourself. According to a 2018 study in JAMA Neurology, more than 1 in 4 seniors who suffered a mild stroke reported confusion or disorientation as their first symptom. And the American Stroke Association notes that this sign is especially common in strokes affecting the right side of the brain, the side that's often missed or misdiagnosed. Because, let's be honest, most people don't associate confusion with stroke. They think of slurred speech or drooping faces. But this kind of mental fog can be just as serious and just as dangerous. Take Henry, a 74-year-old retired postman. One morning, he was making coffee like he always did. But something felt off. He stared at the machine, unable to remember how to turn it on. Then, when his wife asked if he was okay, he looked at her and said, "Where are we going again?" Within the hour, he couldn't recall the names of their grandchildren. They rushed to the ER. Doctors found a small stroke in Henry's frontal lobe. Because they acted quickly, his memory returned within a few days, and he walked out with no lasting damage. So what should you watch for? Difficulty understanding conversations or written instructions. Trouble remembering why you're doing something. Saying things that feel jumbled or out of place. Sudden confusion about time, place, or people. A moment when you just don't feel like yourself. And here's the key. If it's sudden, if it's different, if it makes you or someone you love pause and ask, "What's going on?" Don't wait. Instead of brushing it off as a senior moment, treat it like a neurological emergency. Because time doesn't just protect movement and speech, it protects your memory, your identity, your connection to the world around you. And that's something worth fighting for. You stand up from your chair, but something feels off. You take a step, and your foot doesn't lift the way it should. Your stride is uneven. You reach for a glass, and your hand misses. You try to button your shirt, and suddenly your fingers aren't cooperating. Now, sure, aging comes with little stumbles here and there. We all feel clumsy from time to time. But this is different. Sudden trouble walking, standing, or performing everyday movements could be a sign that your brain's motor control is under attack. Why? Because your ability to move smoothly, with balance and coordination, depends on signals traveling between your motor cortex, cerebellum, and brainstem. And during a stroke, those signals can get scrambled fast. The result? Muscles that don't move right, legs that drag, arms that miss the mark, a body that suddenly doesn't feel like your own. According to the National Stroke Association, over 35% of people over age 65 who suffer a stroke experience trouble walking within the first 30 minutes. And a 2021 study in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience found that subtle walking changes, like a wider stance or slower steps, can be early signs of mild to moderate strokes in seniors. Let me tell you about Leon Bradley. He's 80 years old, a dog lover. Walks his beagle every morning. Same route, same time. But one morning, just halfway down the block, he noticed something strange. His right foot dragged. Then, he couldn't lift it at all. He tried to turn back, but stumbled into a fence. Thankfully, a neighbor saw him. They called 911. Doctors diagnosed a mild ischemic stroke in the motor region of his brain. Because help arrived fast, Leon was back to walking, without a cane, within 2 weeks. So, what should you watch for? A foot that suddenly drags or can't step forward, a hand that misses objects or fumbles simple tasks, a stride that's uneven, shaky, or slow, trouble with coordination, zippers, buttons, utensils, falls that happen without explanation. And here's what matters most. Don't confuse new clumsiness with normal aging. Yes, joints stiffen, muscles slow. But stroke causes sudden changes, not gradual ones. Instead of saying, "I guess I'm just getting old," ask yourself, did this start today? Is this new? Because when it comes to your independence, your balance, and your ability to move through life on your own terms, every minute matters. And listening to your body when it stumbles might just keep you standing strong. Now, maybe you're thinking, I've never felt any of these signs, so I'm probably fine, right? And I hope you are. But here's the truth. Stroke doesn't always wait for symptoms. Sometimes it builds quietly behind the scenes, especially in older adults. And by the time symptoms appear, the damage has already begun. That's why being proactive is just as important as being reactive. Instead of waiting for signs, take steps now to reduce your risk. Start by talking with your doctor. Ask about routine screenings, even if you feel healthy. Get your blood pressure checked. Keep tabs on cholesterol, blood sugar, and heart rhythm. And if you've had a mini stroke or TIA in the past, even just one, you're at a much higher risk for a full stroke down the line. Think of it this way. Would you rather wait until your car breaks down or catch the problem during a regular tune-up? Your brain deserves the same care. And one more thing. The people around you matter too. If you're a caregiver, a spouse, or a friend, be the one who knows what to look for. Because when stroke strikes, the person experiencing it may not even realize what's happening. But you will. And that knowledge can save their life. So, even if you've never had a symptom, even if you feel strong and steady today, don't let that be a reason to let your guard down. Let it be your reason to stay ready. Because with stroke, the best outcome doesn't come from luck. It comes from knowing what to do before the damage begins. A stroke doesn't always begin with sirens. It doesn't always drop you to the floor. Sometimes it begins with a whisper, a tingling hand, a stuttered word, a glass of water slipping from your fingers. Each of the 7 signs we've talked about: numbness, slurred speech, sudden vision changes, dizziness, intense headache, confusion, trouble walking. They may seem small on their own, but together they could be the difference between independence and long-term care, between full recovery and permanent disability, between life or something far more difficult. And here's the part too many people forget. Over 80% of strokes are preventable, not just by managing your blood pressure or watching your cholesterol, though that matters, but by knowing the signs, by acting fast, and by trusting your instincts when something feels off. Because when you act fast, you give yourself options. You give doctors time, and you give your brain the best possible chance to heal. So if any part of this video spoke to you, if you thought of a moment in your life when you ignored a signal, or if someone you love came to mind, don't keep this to yourself. Watch this again with your spouse. Share it with your children. Send it to your neighbor, your church group, your book club. Because knowledge, shared at the right time, can save a life. And if you want more clear, compassionate health tips like this one, click the like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell. We make these videos for people like you. People who want to age with strength, dignity, and wisdom. And wisdom starts with knowing when to listen to your body and when to act with courage. Thank you for being here. Stay safe. Stay strong. And remember, you're never too old to protect your brain.